Welcome to RaWMachines, a journey into some of the world's most remarkable working processes. In this episode, we travel to the village of Hasselbach to follow the path of flax, from the fields to the spinning wheel in winter. This is a closed, cyclical process in which traditional craftsmanship and inherited knowledge align with the rhythm of the seasons, revealing patience, skill, and a profound understanding of nature. Let us begin. Situated on the Hunsrück highlands near Castellaun, the village of Hasselbach emerged in a rugged, stony landscape shaped by a harsh climate. Before the Second World War, flax was the dominant crop, central to household economies and everyday cultural life. The most significant surviving trace is the Brechkaule, a structure once used for drying and processing flax stalks, now a rare physical marker of a fading tradition. With a population of around 150, the village is characterized by slate-clad houses typical of the Hunsrück. A handful of families still preserve traditional skills and historic tools, making it possible to reconstruct the complete flax cycle, from sowing and harvesting to fiber processing. The soil was thoroughly plowed and harrowed, then enriched with well-rotted manure to restore fertility. Before sowing, the field was rolled and lightly harrowed again to create a fine seed bed, allowing the flax to germinate evenly. Because flax is highly nutrient demanding, it was never grown in consecutive years. Preceding crops such as clover, fodder plants, potatoes, beets, or cabbage helped suppress weeds and rebuild soil conditions before the next flax cycle. In the 19th century, the Hunsrück region was an important center of flax cultivation in the Rheinland. Although production was largely for household use, local flax fiber was valued for its quality and traded at regional markets, especially in Simmern, providing rural households with a steady source of supplemental income. Flaxseed was kept in small cloth bags and sown by hand, broadcast evenly across the field. In the upland village of Hasselbach, sowing usually took place in late May, while in the lower Rhine lowlands it could begin as early as April. Seed was mostly saved from the previous harvest, though it was sometimes brought in from East Prussia or Russia. Flax was sown densely so the plants would grow close together, producing long, fine fibers. The traditional rate was about 60 to 80 pounds of seed per morgen of land. After sowing, the field was lightly harrowed and compacted with a wooden roller, then covered with loose manure to retain moisture and protect the young shoots. Farming experience showed that manure too rich in nitrogen could reduce fiber quality.
Komm, dummel dich mal ein bisschen. Ich bin nicht so viel, wären wir doch fertig und dahin. Ja, dummel dich mal ein bisschen. Komm mal, dummel dich, ja. Lass mal vorankommen.
A few weeks later, when the flax reached roughly hand height, weeding began. Weeds were pulled by hand or lightly hoed. Even when trampled, the flax would straighten itself again within a few days. After about 2 months, the flax fields come into bloom. When sown in late May, the plants reach a height of roughly 1.10 to 1.20 meters by August, with straight stems and narrow leaves. White or pale blue flowers develop into oil-rich seed capsules, used both medicinally and for pressing linseed oil.
Macht er das nicht über die Fingerlaube?
Harvest takes place in August, at the latest in early September, around 99 to 100 days after sowing. Once the lower leaves have fallen and the capsules turn brown, the flax is pulled up by the roots to preserve fiber length, then tied into handful-sized bundles known as havel. The bundles are stood upright in the field on Y-shaped stakes and crossbars, allowing sun and wind to dry the stalks and further ripen the seed. After 8 to 14 days, the flax is gathered into larger bundles, transported home, stored in the granary, and left to await the next stages of processing.
Ging gut dran.
Oh, da ist. Ja, von wem kommt das?
Ja, von wem kommt das?
Oder
So.
Feier
Ja, so.
Willst du nicht mit? Die letzte.
Ja, man geht um mit. Ich dachte immer, der hat ja das schon gesagt.
Das wird ja umgekickelt. Ja, das ist speziell, oder? Die ist nicht durch.
This windmill was not born in Kulmern. It came from Kontrup, near Osnabrück. Unlike the windmills of the Rhineland, it bears a distinct look. local imprint in its structure and proportions. After the Second World War, the windmill fell into disrepair. In 1969, it was dismantled. 2 years later, in 1971, it was reconstructed within the museum, not as a dead exhibit, but as a machine capable of operation. When the second pair of sails is installed, the complete sail assembly emerges. There is a front pair and a back pair, all connected to the drive shaft. The shaft is usually made of wood, but this particular windmill uses a cast iron shaft, a sign of a technical transition.
Auch von den Bindehalmen, die hier gesondert angereicht werden, streift man die Samenböllchen herunter.
Period. The shaft is set at an incline to allow the sails to catch the wind more efficiently. The entire cap can be rotated toward the wind by a hand crank using a winch located on the ground. The trade of the millwright has today become a recognized craft with formal training and mastery. Degrees. However, the number of people pursuing this profession is increasingly small, and each sail installation like this serves as a rare outdoor classroom. The sails are only the starting point. The power of the wind only truly gains meaning when it is transmitted down to the millstones, where wind becomes flour.
Bitte schön. Prost, mit mehr Stutzigern da. Also.
Wer schiebt da nicht
Nicht genug, ja.
Ja, Prost.
Prost.
Ja. Ah, recht nicht.
Sustenance, and livelihood. The millstones are typically made of basalt, quarried from the Eifel region, a stone that is both hard and durable. Two stones work as a pair, one stationary, one rotating, driven directly by the...
Komm mal wieder anfangen. So, auf geht's.
The windmill's main shaft. The sails are approximately 12 meters long, sometimes fitted with canvas to increase wind catching capacity. But the ultimate grinding efficiency still depends. Depends on the skill of the stonemason. Between the sails high above and the stones down below, a silent connection exists. The wind cannot work alone, and neither can this craft. At the top of the windmill, the space tightens, leaving only the wind, the wood, and the essential tools. tools here are few: wood chisels, hewing axes, and the adze. The entire wooden structure is handcrafted, while iron hoops ensure the joints remain stable during operation. When the brake is released, the windmill
So, fertig zum Dreschen. Auf zum letzten.
begins to turn. The steady sound of moving timber demonstrates the bond between tool, craftsmanship, and experience, the foundation that has allowed the windmill to
So, alle mit. Komm, Cheppe.
endure through many generations. At the Commerce Open Air Museum, the windmill is not merely displayed as an artifact, but operated as a living memory. The trade of building and preserving mills is supported as a
So,
So.
so ist gut. Das rein.
heritage, with formal training and monument protection. The windmill becomes a symbol of a sustainable energy history, where humans learn to work with the wind instead of against it. Keeping the mill turning is also a way to ensure that this knowledge does not vanish, for as long as the wind still blows, these sails still have stories to tell the future. The journey of installing windmill sails, at first glance, is merely a sequence of technical maneuvers. But look,
So, hört geladen. Gut, dann mal eine
Nej, Schule, vid.
Så då.
Jag vill hålla mig färdig svär.
looking closer, it is a story of how humans once generated power through observation, patience, and craftsmanship. A windmill does not force the wind to work. It is designed to receive and guide it. Every detail within the mill is the result of centuries of observation. Which wood bears weight best, which angle allows the sails to turn most smoothly, where strength is required, and where yielding is necessary to allow the material to naturally expand and contract. The process of mounting the sails clearly demonstrates this. No step is redundant, and no step is rushed. When the windmill is complete and begins to turn, the moment is not loud. There is no roar of an engine, no flick. Clicking of a switch. There is only the sound of wind brushing against wood, a slow but steady rhythmic rotation. It is the sound of an era when energy was still visible, tactile, and understood by the eyes, the ears, and the hands.
So, da kann man noch mal. Oh, was haben wir? Lohn fliegt das mit Wasser zunächst hat. Abher noch ein bisschen wie weit dran. Mein Gott, noch einmal.
Ja, mach nicht so voll, die ist so schwer. So, das kannst du noch voll machen. Jawohl.
Hands. The decline of the windmill was not a failure of ancient technology, but the consequence of a historical choice. Steam, electricity, and the internal combustion engine brought greater, faster power that was less dependent on the weather. But in exchange, humans gradually lost their direct connection to the source of energy they used. Energy became invisible, abstract, and detached from daily labor experiences. Along the edge of the village, flax breaking pits were set up and shielded from the wind with one tucher, heavy tarps stretched from harvest wagons. A working zone of roughly 20 meters was laid out along a footpath. At its center stood a rectangular brick drying pit. Behind it were the flax breaking benches with space nearby for the finished fiber bundles. About 8 meters away, a rough stone furnace burned continuously, channeling heat through an underground flue into the drying pit.
Die Hälfte ist aber offen.
Die Hälfte ist offen, warum?
Ja, was da das?
Nee.
Ein altes schönes Mädchen.
No? War doch nicht. Das ist doch klar. Das ist doch sicher bei dir.
Raw flax was placed on iron grates inside the pit. Because of the high temperatures and flying sparks, the workers had to turn and reposition the stems constantly. While still warm, the woody core was at its most brittle, ideal conditions for the breaking stage.
Mittelbach wird der Flachs nicht so schön wie ein Hasselbach,
As breaking begins, the flax stems snap and fragment, and woody waste, known as granin, quickly accumulates on the floor. While large workshops had already replaced hand-breaking benches with iron roller machines, village households continued to use traditional wooden breakers made from chestnut. The work demanded not only strength, but careful skill in handling each bundle. The flax was laid crosswise over the sharp-edged slats of the breaking bench. As the lid came down, the woody core fractured and the granin fell away. Both the thin tips and the thicker root ends had to pass through the breaker to preserve the longest possible bast fibers. This step was carried out immediately after the flax was removed from the drying pit. While the stems were still warm, the wood broke more easily, and the bast fibers suffered less damage, an essential condition for effective flax breaking. After breaking, the flax became Schleissflachs, coarse, unrefined bundles of fiber. In this state, the fibers were still stiff, mixed with woody fragments and not yet sorted. Their lengths were uneven. For storage and transport back to the house, the fiber bundles were kept as braids or hanks. The fine ends were tied to secure them, while the middle was tightly twisted to prevent the fibers from slipping apart. Flax breaking was usually done indoors on the granary floor. Women carried out most of the work, while men assisted by passing the flax bundles from hand to hand. The tools consisted of a thin wooden board with a sharp edge and a breaking post firmly set into a wooden base. Each bundle of Schleissflachs was struck against the board's edge, causing the remaining woody fragments, known as granin, to break loose and fall to the floor as waste material called Hodschen. With each blow, the flax fibers became progressively cleaner and more supple.
Ja, ja. Das geht ja spät dran. Wir haben noch nicht alles gefahren. Ja, mit dem Flachs sind wir spät dran.
By mid-November, families gathered for the flax hackling stage. Iron-toothed hackles were set up in square clusters, and the work was largely carried out by men, while women prepared and sorted the fiber braids. After the first hackling pass, the flax was known as Karen. The longest and finest fibers were separated as kernflachs, or core flax. Holding the bundle at its midpoint, the hackler combed each end in turn to preserve the long fibers, while the shorter fibers were caught in the iron teeth, forming werig or verg.
Dann gut, wie ich lehnen will. Ja. Geht halt auf.
Ich habe schon immer noch die Schnuppe.
Von der Orchelo.
The first grade fiber was then hackled again on boards with finer teeth until the fibers were fully separated, thin, straight, and parallel. The guiding principle of Hecheln, hackling, was to avoid brute force. Only light, precise movements of the fingertips preserved fiber length and final quality.
Was hat gestern Hitchcliff gemacht? Da hast du
From the first Sunday of Advent until Candlemas, Mayan gatherings were traditionally held throughout the winter. These were communal spinning sessions in the Hunsrück region, where women and young girls took turns meeting in one another's homes, bringing along prepared flax and their spinning wheels. In the spinning room, flax that has already been broken, scotched, and hackled enters the spinning stage. The spinner draws out small amounts of fiber, twisting them evenly by hand to form yarn strong enough for weaving. At the center of the room are box spinning wheels, a type widely used in the early 20th century. These upright frame wheels carry the spindle, flyer, and bobbin above the drive wheel. Powered by a foot treadle and connected through a drive rod and belt, the wheel delivers a steady, controlled motion that twists and winds the yarn at a consistent pace.
Wie in vielen Hunsrückstuben hat der viereckige Ofen einen Aufbau mit einem Gittertürchen, der
The most technically demanding stage is spinning yarn from core flax. This is the finest fiber of the flax plant, known as chia, used to produce exceptionally thin thread. Before spinning, the braided fibers are loosened and placed onto a distaff rack, mounted directly onto the spinning wheel in place of the usual bobbin shaft. This setup allows the flax fibers to be drawn out evenly and kept straight. Yarn spun from core flax was used to weave high-quality linen for shirts, blouses, aprons, bed linens, as well as tablecloths, napkins, and handkerchiefs. During spinning, women worked with several types of refined flax fiber, including chia, core flax, Bäuerliche, and Hütchen. Among these, Hütchen consists of short, coarse fibers and was typically used to introduce young learners to the spinning wheel. When spinning flax, the spinner moistens the thumb and forefinger to better draw out the fibers. Small amounts are pulled evenly from the fiber supply, lightly twisted by hand and fed onto the spindle. The continuous rotation of the spindle tightens the fibers and winds the thread onto the bobbin. The essential skill lies in maintaining a steady flow of fiber so the yarn remains even in thickness. If the thread breaks or the fiber supply runs out, the ends are joined directly by hand, and spinning continues without interruption. Alongside flax, wool was also spun during winter work sessions. The technique is similar, though the fiber is usually held on the lap and drawn differently. Virich, the tangled fibers left after hackling, is placed on a specialized tool known as a gavelschit and spun into coarse yarn for simpler utilitarian uses.
So, wer hat das an? Das ist auch nicht so jammer. Ich habe noch Hunger.
Flax retting is the final stage of the cycle, marking the shift from rough processing to fiber refinement, and directly determining the material's quality, durability, and spinability in all stages that follow. Traditional flax retting ponds were usually located in forests or low-lying damp areas where water levels could remain stable. Many of these ponds were abandoned for decades. When reused, they had to be carefully restored and cleaned. Along the pond's edge, materials such as wooden beams and heavy oak planks were prepared in advance to weight the flax bundles and keep them fully submerged throughout the retting process.
Ja, dan kom je hem met de emmer. Nee, het is in zijn glasje.
Ja, dat sla je erin.
Zo stil.
Dat is net.
Nee,
Ja, nog een ogenblik, ja, nog een.
Ja, dat is nog erin.
Dat is het eerst aan, ja. Doe Christus, ze was kunnen gelezen.
Ja, langer had nog niks.
Maar merci.
Ja, je hebt helemaal je heren.
Ja, dat heb ik.
Because flax retting is no longer regularly practiced, reconstructing the process today relies largely on the memories and experience of older generations.
Als je hem op ziet, dan kunnen we het laatste. Probeer ons uit of het stabiel genoeg is.
Once preparations are complete, the flax is lowered into the pond directly at the water's edge. 2 planks are laid across the pond so the workers can operate without stepping into the water. 2 young men seated on the boards receive each bundle and place it into the pond, always lowering the root end first.
Net zo weit weg. Ja, wat doet dat zo? Doe je stem aan. Ja, je moet maar in de Kom, doe je mee. Hopla.
The bundles are packed tightly in rows, pressed down lightly with the feet to prevent them from floating. Technically, the flax must stand upright, with only the tips protruding above the surface. If bundles float or tilt, retting becomes uneven.
Is er diep genoeg drin? Ja, ja. Die dekken we nachher von bovenaf. Schmied mal ruhig jetzt mir runter. Weil je jetzt schneller kriege, sonst schwimmen die all hoch.
Ja, dat is een vuuranlanger. Tussen die Schwimmen nicht der Deper.
Ja, dann leg noch ein paar an und dann tun wir die 6 drauf.
A typical retting pond measures about 3 by 6 meters and is roughly 1.2 meters deep. The flax is laid in sequence, starting at the narrow end near the access point and moving gradually toward the center of the pond. Once stacked, the flax is covered with layers of grass, then weighted down with wooden beams to ensure the bundles remain fully submerged throughout the retting process.
So, jetzt den Bullet.
Once the first layer of flax is securely laid, the seating platform is shifted back to lower the next layers. The platform does not rest directly on the water, but is supported by 2 angled planks driven into the bank, providing a stable footing for both the worker and the weight of the flax bundles. A typical retting pond holds around 700 to 1,000 kilograms of raw flax, roughly the yield of 1 traditional field unit, while larger ponds can accommodate even more.
Das Brett, das schwimmt mich noch zu sehr. So, dann dumme ich mal jetzt hin. So, jetzt mal Spaß.
Oh, da ist der letzte.
Da ist noch eine. So, die sind aber nicht. Nee, die noch nicht. Alles gut.
Ja, voll gut.
Wenn die Bäuerliche sind, aber da größer da bleiben.
Da haben wir Räusch drin. Armbrust und Roller.
Ja.
Den ganzen Tag noch nichts zu tun.
Du weißt, was da kommt.
Over Kreuz?
Ja,
Over
ja,
Kreuz?
oder parallel. Und die Angel sieht dran vorbei. Ja, das geht doch.
Genau, richtig.
So,
Das Bild der Rot.
So, jetzt haben wir geschafft. Nee, nichts mehr. Die Kohle ist voll.
Retting typically lasts between 7 and 14 days, depending on weather conditions. During this time, the covering sinks, air bubbles rise to the surface, and a strong odor develops, clear signs that fermentation is underway.
Das ist ja jetzt wieder etwas abgesackt, nachdem er zuerst hochgetrieben war. Also, jetzt mal gucken, wie es geworden ist. Oh, guck mal da, wie schön die Faser sich löst.
War gestern noch nicht so gut, jetzt ist es besser.
Jetzt können sie
Ja.
raus. Aber hier noch eine Probe.
From this point on, the flax must be checked regularly, as over-retting weakens the fibers. The decisive test is simple. The flax is ready when the fibrous bark can be easily pulled away from the stem after it is bent and broken.
Komm, ich
So,
helfe.
das wäre getan. Morgen holen wir raus. Du kennst den Spruch doch, wenn die Kirmesse klinken und die Flasrote stinken, dann ist der beste Tiet von das Jahr getan.
Ist er dann noch gut?
Ja, doch, wir haben die Hus unter uns geprüft.
Oh, gut.
Haben richtig gedrückt und dann durchgebrochen, das ist ganz gut.
Da war der letzte.
Once the flax has fully retted, the bundles are lifted from the pond. The wooden weights are removed, and pitchforks are used to reach the bundles, often floating just below the surface, pulling them out and laying them on dry ground to drain. This stage requires careful timing. Under-retting makes the woody core difficult to separate later on, while over-retting weakens the fibers and lowers their quality. Ponds with iron-rich soils can also leave reddish stains on the flax, marks that are difficult to remove during spinning and weaving.
einer Seite legt.
Schneller bitte.
Das siegt.
Ah, jetzt kommen wir gut dran.
Ist das nass?
Alles schön gebündelt. Früher hieß der, wenn die Flachskultur in den Hus kommt, du stinkst wie ein Notter.
Notter?
Ja, der Notter, das ist wohl Fischotter. Das wird. So, haben wir sie. Ja. Jo. Und mal alles auf die Karte. So. Und jetzt die Wurzeln richtig beieinander. So. Lieber mit den Händen.
Ich kann nicht besser packen.
So, fest hier noch,
Ja,
wenn
hier
nichts
ist noch
runterfällt. Oh,
das
den
Bund.
wichtigsten Straf nach oben drauf. Ah. Sprechen untereinander Englisch.
Ja, ehrlich?
Ja, sicher, die sprechen Englisch.
After being lifted from the retting pond, the flax bundles are set along the bank to drain, then carted back to the village. At home, the flax is stood upright against walls or fences to dry in sun and wind. When the weather turns poor, it is gently dried in the bread oven after the fire has gone out. Only once fully dry is the flax ready for the winter refining stages. The entire flax cycle in Hasselbach is not merely a sequence of agricultural and craft techniques, but a self-contained system of labor that closely binds nature, human effort, and knowledge passed down through generations, season by season. From flax seeds sown in the poor soils of the Hunsrück plateau to fine thread spun on a winter spinning wheel, each stage reflects a deep understanding of land, weather, and the plant's changing condition, knowledge refined through centuries of hands-on work. Although many of these practices faded with industrialization, the traces that remain reveal a resilient culture of self-sufficiency. Nothing wasted, no step unnecessary, preserving cultural memory and reminding us of a patient, balanced relationship between people and the natural world. Thank you for watching to the end. If you enjoy stories like this, be sure to like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. This is RaWMachines. See you next time.